Jets select Sauce Gardner.
Sauce Gardner is a New York Jet!
Swaggy Sauce Gardner.
I love Sauce. I love his tape. I love his press technique. I love his confidence. He has everything you want to see in the position. And I think Robert Saleh in this scheme is perfect. It's a hand-in-glove fit for him, man.
Garrett Wilson.
It's Garrett Wilson! The New York Jets have just got two big-time playmakers!
I believe that Garrett Wilson is going to be the most impactful rookie receiver in this class. And I think we see Zach Wilson play like he did the last 6 games of the year, times 10, and have a phenomenal second season.
Wow, you think? Yeah! Yeah! Let's Jermaine Johnson!
Breece Hall, running back, Iowa State.
Breece Hall, oh my God, they got him! They went offense. They went with the best running back in the draft. Jeremy Rucker, oh my God! The Long Island native is a New York Jet!
J-E-T-S, Jet.
Let's go! Yo, what is good, Jets Nation? Welcome back to another Jets Media live stream, and today we got another special guest. You guys know him very well. He's Joe from Jet X Factor. We're going to be breaking down the draft. We're going to be breaking down all the latest news regarding the Jets, that they might be adding some new players in free agency, and of course go over the roster. So Joe, welcome to the stream. Love having you back on here. How you doing today, my man?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you having me back on for a second time. So a nice little trend we got going on here. And like we were talking about a little bit before we started recording, there's some legitimate excitement around the Jets right now. So it's actually fun to talk about them instead of trying to kind of make excuses for Adam Gase and Bowles and all these guys. There's actually a reason to be excited. So I'm really excited to talk with you.
It feels different, right? It feels like we're not selling. You got like selling the Jets on false hope. It's like we can back it up. You know, I know that you are a guy that just lives in the film room. And guys, everyone in the chat, if you're not familiar with Joe and his work over at Jets X Factor, please make sure you go down below in the description and click on the link and subscribe to Jets X Factor. Post great stuff over there. I know that you've done a lot of homework on all of these players that the Jets have drafted, so I'm really excited to get your thoughts of each individual player. But before we get into the draft, Joe, let's talk about what we were really talking about before we went live, that it feels like it's different right now. Usually the Jets win the offseason every year. It feels like we're getting the highlight, the headlines of we're getting this player, and Jets fans get a lot of excitement in the offseason, but this one feels different. So why don't you expand on why this offseason feels a little different than previous offseasons when the Jets feel like we win the offseason?
Well, I feel like a lot of the years that we've won the offseason were with moves that were kind of short-sighted, whether it be C.J. Mosley for the money he got, or Jermaine Johnson, who obviously completely flamed out. Years past, kind of adding big pieces to a team that wasn't ready to go anywhere, and a team that wasn't ready to go anywhere that was also old. So like now we've seen the infusion of youth with like some of the oldest guys who are starting at 30 years old, 31 years old with Laken Tomlinson, but the rest of the roster being like 25, 26 years old. So, and even younger than that with some of these rookies who are 21, 22 coming in. So they have the cap space. They have the young players. They have the right direction under Joe Douglas right now. And with Saleh, who seems like he's an actual leader of men, like unlike some of the other coaches we've had in the past, Adam Gase calling out guys and Todd Bowles kind of being more reserved. I think they have a ton of pieces in place moving forward to actually make that leap. We're not seeing a roster turnover coming in, in the next few years like we do. It's like 2015, exciting year. Unfortunately, we saw how old the roster was, and we knew Fitzpatrick wasn't leading us to this promised land. So now there is a lot of excitement going forward. And in the last couple of years, in terms of like getting rid of Darnold, people were kind of iffy on that. Getting draft picks for that, getting draft picks for Herndon, getting draft picks for Blake Cashman, getting draft picks for Adams, who I'm sure a lot of people hated at the time. Now we're seeing it all come to fruition and result in some players that we really like going forward. So the rebuild that he actually took years to do to really break it down and build it back up properly, we're going to enjoy the fruits of that this season. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and when the Jets brought in Joe Douglas, we all knew that we had to be patient with him, especially that we brought him in a month after Mike McCagnon went through the 2019 draft, and Joe Douglas came here and he had like a 5-year plan that we're waiting to see what he actually needs to do. He starts building this thing properly from the ground up, and now we're in year number 3 of Joe Douglas, and I think it's safe to say that he's done his job. I mean, the talent that the Jets have on paper, not only just in terms of the starters, but the depth, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is legit. So what's your thoughts about what Joe Douglas has done in terms of, reshaping this organization? And obviously it needs to translate to wins, and we have not won football games yet. Joe Douglas has not been a Jets GM when we're succeeding and winning games when it matters the most. So that's the next step. But what's your assessment on what Joe Douglas's plan has been for the past 3 years and how it looks on the depth chart right now?
Yeah, well, one, he got rid of a bunch of bigger Jets. We all remember that jersey shoot when all the new jerseys came out, and everybody's canceled off of it right now. Like I said, trading Sam Darnold, face of the franchise at the time. Obviously, third year didn't work out as well. Trading Jamal Adams, he got rid of a lot of big pieces to again build up the roster. Even last year, people were kind of saying, he's kind of conservative in free agency. And I think we had the third or fourth most guaranteed money in free agency last year. But who can come into the year expecting to see Carl Lawson hurt, Vinny Curry hurt, LaMarcus Joyner hurt, Becton hurt? So we were already a team that was kind of on the cusp of a little bit of a come up last year. I truly felt like that. But then when you take a team who's not the best in the NFL, or not even average at that point, and just hamper them with injuries, just injury after injury after injury. And it's been the third or fourth year we've been one of the top teams in terms of money on the IR in terms of injuries. So it really hurt where we were going last year. I didn't think the roster coming into the year, with assuming health, was a 4-win roster. I thought they're gonna pick up maybe 6, 7, 8 games. Unfortunately, it really hampered them with the injuries, like it would most teams, but especially the Jets. And then this year, you're having a lot of those players come back, and then you also, on top of that, now have a bunch of new additions from this free agency. And from the draft, again, building up a lot of stock of draft picks. So he really turned the roster over. He wanted a long contract for a reason, because it was going to take patience, which something the Jets fans and the Jets brass hasn't had it in a while. And now we're seeing him go into his third, fourth year here with the Jets. And we're all legitimately excited about the roster for a reason, because it's done in a proper way. We're not signing the Jermaine Johnsons of the world or anything like this. He got rid of the dead money on the cap from Quincy Enunwas of the past. We're still paying last year, I believe. So, he has built it the right way in terms of the contract and in terms of the youth mixed in with some veteran depth as well.
Yeah, and the fact that I saw this thing on Twitter, and I'm sure you saw it as well, that the Jets were first or top 3 in dead cap in a couple of years ago, and now we are last. I mean, we have no dead cap this year. That just shows you what type of general manager Joe Douglas is cleaning up the mess that was left for him. And I feel like Jets fans cannot ask for a better person to be in charge of this Jets organization, to really, build this thing properly, build this thing from the ground up, and getting every single player on the Jets, especially on offense, is Joe Douglas guys. So let's get right into this report that I want to get into that is pretty timely. So according to Connor Hughes, the New York Jets are not done adding potential players. So both of these players are interested in joining the Jets, and the Jets are interested in them. As we know, Larry Ogunjobi, I probably already botched that. Joe told me how to say it beforehand. Ogunjobi, there we go. Larry Ogunjobi and linebacker Quan Alexander are interested. The Jets are interested in them. So Larry actually was with the Jets, visiting them for the past 2 days. We all know about him. He signed a big contract with the Chicago Bears, worth around $40 million, $26 million guaranteed money, but it fell through because of a failed physical. He got injured in the wild card game and needs foot surgery. So what's your thoughts about these two players? Do you think it would be smart for the Jets to sign one of them, or if not both?
Yeah, I'm hoping for both. And we're talking about the draft, I'm sure, and going heavy offense, but that left two or three big holes in the defense. Obviously, the run stuffing defensive tackle is something the Jets have been looking for. Ever since they lost, obviously, Fatukasi. It's not something you want to just brush away, because they struggled in the run game in the interior, even with Fatukasi last year. And now you take him away, they could struggle a little bit there. So I really want to see a D tackle for months at this point. Quan Alexander, I know the Jets brass is reportedly a little bit higher on the linebacker group than a lot of the fans are. To me, again, having Mosley, and then behind that it's Quincy, and then Sherwood and Nasruddin, it's just not enough for me. Even if the unfortunate situation where Mosley goes down and now you're 3 starters, and I know they're going to run a lot of 4-2-5 and things like that because it's a nickel league now. But when the other teams are running heavier personnel sets and you have 3 linebackers on the field, even with Mosley, without Mosley, your next couple of guys, again, Sherwood, Nasruddin, and Quincy, it's just not enough for me. So I've always thought they need to add a linebacker. I'm sure, second round, we were looking at Dean and Muma and all these guys and Leo Chanel, and it didn't happen. So I think they need to add a linebacker. And Quan Alexander, I know he's been banged up a little bit, but still in the last 2 years, I think he's played about 12 games in each year. So at 12 games out of 17, I'll take it for Quan Quan, assuming that health is going to carry over in terms of like how much he gets injured and stuff. So really interested in that. And then Ogunjobi is a guy who is a good pass rusher, 7.5 sacks last year off the top of my head. And I think that would have probably led the Jets, right? So he's a good pass rusher. Adding to an interior that would be stacked with him, JFM, Sheldon Rankins, Thomas, even Marshall from last year. Didn't even mention Q yet. And then he's a guy in the run game who I've seen a little bit. He's kind of like a boomer bust guy in the run game where he'll make one really big splash play, but it might take him out of position. And the next play he'll get burned a little bit for it. So he's kind of a boomer or bust run defender. But still, that's a lot of talent to add in May. So I would be excited for both of them. I'm hoping for both of them.
Yeah, I feel like you hit on the nail. Obviously, the one position group on this Jets team that Jets fans are not too comfortable with is the linebacker room. And it's top heavy, right? We have CJ Mosley, who we all think we're confident in this year, coming off a really good individual season last year. But the problem about CJ is, he's not that guy that's going to be the future of the position, right? We want a player that in the draft that we can develop for the long term. And we did draft 2 guys last year in Nazarin and Sherwood. So maybe that's why the Jets decided not to go linebacker in this draft. So I just want to get your thoughts real quick about Hamza Nazarin and Jamian Sherwood. Obviously, they did not really show a lot in their rookie seasons. Sherwood went down with an injury. Nazarin was more of a special teams guy. Mm-hmm. Do you expect these 2 players to be guys that are going to be impactful players to develop? Because they're guys that the Jets feel like are really high on, and they're safety hybrids, as you know, to transition to linebacker. So what's your thoughts about those 2 players entering year 2?
Yeah, I think we're going to be like plenty positive about like offensive line, running back, tight end. I'm not overly positive with the linebackers. Like I get wanting them to take that leap, but when you look at it, 5th, 6th round guys who are safeties who are transitioning into linebacker, it's a really hard move to make. Just transitioning from safety to safety in the NFL is a hard transition to make. Yeah. So now you're moving up 5 to 10 yards and everything's happening a lot quicker. I have some faith in Hamza. I really like his athletic ability. So he's a guy who I saw coming out of Florida State being really, really raw. But with a couple of years of refinement, he might be able to be a player who's a spot starter or if not a starter. So I didn't expect him to ever come in and really hit the ground running because of how raw he was. And Sherwood, I'm not going to lie, it's probably my least favorite pick of last year. I don't think he's the most athletic guy, even at linebacker. So I think he's a negative athlete in terms of the linebacker position. So I think he's going to be mostly a backup. I know it's kind of the Jets staff is all high on them. To be, again, I don't like to blow smoke up the Jets' butts. I don't think it's there with those guys. Hamza could be there in a year or 2, maybe even this year, but I'm not putting my faith right now in May 11th, 12th, whatever it is, into Hamza seeing significant snaps. But again, we went heavy offense. If we struggle a little bit on defense and we're losing, 30 to 27 or something like that, okay, I could deal with that. So I could take some lumps at linebacker. But Quan Alexander, I think, would be a nice addition for sure. That's the reason I really want it to happen.
Yeah, I think Jets fans going into the draft, and we're about to get into that now. We're in the 2nd round. We're expecting a defensive player. We're in the 3rd round. We're expecting a defensive player. And Joe Douglas is like, no. This is all about Zach Wilson. The defense will be okay. We're going to sacrifice the linebacker position. We're going to sacrifice the safety position. And we're just going to go all in and get Zach Wilson as many weapons as possible. So now let's transition into the draft. But before we do that, guys, everybody in the chat, make sure you guys hit that like button if you're enjoying the show and you want to see Joe join the show more often. He does great stuff over on Jet X Factor. That is linked down below in the description. If you're not subscribed to Jets X Factor already, I do not know what you're doing. They got a lot of great people over there creating content on their website, on Twitter, on YouTube. So please do me a favor and go down below and subscribe over to Jets X Factor. And of course, make sure you smash that like button if you guys are enjoying the show. So before we get into each individual player, Joe, I want to get your overall thoughts from this draft class. If you put your mind in, it's Thursday of draft day. It's like an hour or 2 before the draft. Where's your mind at in terms of who you want? And then where was your mind at when you're going to sleep Thursday night after what happened? Like, what were you expecting? Yeah. And then your reaction after you actually saw what happened?
Yeah, and one of the great things about being recorded all the time is, and one of the negatives is, if you're right on your opinions, it's recorded, boom, it's there, and if you're wrong, it's gonna be there forever. So I was really, the entire probably 3 months leading up to the draft, at least 2 months of the draft, I was really hoping for Sauce. My number 1 player in the draft was Hutchinson. Absolutely love Hutchinson, but realistically, I did not think he was gonna fall to 4. So the entire time, I was hoping for Sauce because to me, it was Hutchinson, Sauce at 2, Ekwonu at 3, and after that, there's not the biggest drop off in the world, but a drop off. Like those are my 3 true like blue chip players. I feel like we're in this draft. So I want to come away with one of them. Obviously, the Jets signed Laken Tomlinson, and so I think that kind of kicks Aquanu out of the conversation because I think he would play guard for the Jets, which I'm okay with him playing guard and being an all-pro guard for the Jets if they were to draft him at 4. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen, so I was hoping for Sauce. And then a D end at 10. Preferably, I like Karlaftis falling to 10. Obviously, he fell later. Great pick by the Chiefs later in the draft. But I was really hoping for Sauce, D end, trade up for a wide receiver, or you trade draft picks for a receiver. So most ideally, Sauce, Karlaftis, and let's say a second and a third, whatever it might have been for Debo or AJ or whoever it might have been. Obviously, that didn't happen. So you're sitting there at 4. They grab Sauce. Love it. 10, Wilson, which we'll talk about. Okay, they need a receiver. But where's the D end? Like everybody else, I think 90% of Jets fans are thinking, okay, where's the D end now? So you start to think, okay, Ebiketie, is it Cam Thomas? Is Karlaftis going to fall? We're going to trade it back up. And then obviously 26 comes, they trade up, get Jermaine Johnson addressing, 2 massive positions of need on the Jets. One, before going to the draft, D end was probably 1 or 2, and then receiver was the other one. And cherry on top of that, getting Sauce Gardner, I was going to sleep on Thursday night with the big smile on my face.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that Sauce Gardner has been your guy all these months because he's been the same with me. But the thing with me and Sauce Gardner is I was convinced that the Jets just wouldn't draft him. I loved him so much, even going back to when he was still playing in Cincinnati. I would always tune into those games because I just loved him as a prospect. I remember watching that Cincinnati-Bama game, Jamison Williams versus Sauce. I'm like, dude, Sauce is one of my favorite cornerbacks to come out in the draft. He was one of those players that I fell in love with in a way of he's going to be sick wherever he goes to the league. But knowing Joe Douglas and Saleh, they prioritize the trenches. They're not going to take a corner that early. And I'm very happy to be wrong because Sauce Gardner is one of those players that brings a completely different dynamic to this Jets defense, the swagger. Outside of this stuff, what he does on the field, I feel like his presence and his demeanor and his flashy attitude is something that this Jets defense desperately needs in terms of a personality, right? We have kind of star power on offense in terms of draft picks that we're developing to become faces of the team, like Elijah Moore, Zach Wilson, Michael Carter, and now the new players we got in Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, obviously. But we kind of lack that youth star power on defense. So I feel like getting a guy in Sauce is going to do just that. So what's your thoughts of Sauce Gardner? What made him so high on your board that you had him listed at number 2, I believe? And what are your expectations from him in year number 1 and beyond?
Yeah, well, first, one of the big parts of it was the mindset, and you see the kind of the mentality of the team that Joe Douglas is building. You're talking about a guy, and I'm sure you watch his interviews as well. Seems like a really good kid, kick him out of the film room type guy. Doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, not going out partying. If you watch the interview with Richard Sherman, he dropped some really good knowledge there with Sauce Gardner. That's a really great interview to watch if you guys haven't already. But he's a statement pick in terms of the aggression he has, how dedicated to football he is. And then on the field, you're talking about his versatility, you're talking about his smarts, you're talking about him being just as comfortable playing cover 3, cover 4, cover 6, man. And again, the Jets are a really heavy man team on third down, so it's a really important part of their team. The physicality he plays with, the movement skills, 6'3", 4'1", the hip fluidity, the way he transitions from in his breaks, he is legit. Talking about him comfortability in different coverages, bail, left hand shoot, right hand shoot, aggressive press, soft shoot. There's so many different things he does really, really well. So he's really flexible. So absolute slam dunk of a pick. And like you said, and this is something I asked for months and nobody can really give me answers. Why don't quarterbacks or cornerbacks matter in the Jet system? I didn't get it because they run a lot of cover 3, cover 4, cover 1. There's some 2 in there. There's some 5, 7, whatever. But in all of those systems, corner is important. And to me, again, Sauce Gardner, the second best player in the draft, I'm not skipping on Sauce Gardner, who I think can be an elite talent. And like you said, we have some of that talent on offense. But even with the talent on offense, the Jets don't really have a superstar player on their team right now. We have some guys we think can be that superstar player, from Wilson to Elijah Moore to ABT, but they don't really have that guy right now. So you're talking about the number 4 pick in the draft. You want to pick a player who's deserving of that spot, and you don't want to start reaching for needs. And Sauce Gardner being that second best player in the draft, I'm not skipping on him for Breece Hall, who I like. I legitimately like Breece Hall, but I think he's a decent starter, which is cool. Decent starter is better than the Jets have had in a while at corner, but I'm not skipping on Sauce, who could be an elite talent for a decent starter in Breece Hall. It's called depth. Now we have great depth at corner, so slam dunk pick because, again, he's the second best player in the draft. I think he could easily be the best player in this draft after a couple of years of development.
Great breakdown, and I want to touch on a point that you just hit on at the end there, that the depth at the cornerback position is all of a sudden could be the deepest position on this team in terms of the youth, because last year we had 2 young corners who exceeded everybody's expectations in Breece Hall in year number 2. They threw the rookie Brendan Eccles out there and the rookie Michael Carter II out there. And I feel like Jets fans going into week number 1 last year were expecting these corners to just be terrible, be the worst part of this defense, but they exceeded expectations. They were not perfect, but they were one of those positions where you're like, wow, the potential of these guys is real if we add more talent. So then the Jets go out there in free agency and sign DJ Reed. They go out there in the draft and they draft Sauce Gardner. So now Brendan Eccles and Breece Hall have starting experience underneath their belt, and now they're going to be part of the depth. So in my opinion, if one of Sauce or DJ Reed unfortunately goes down with an injury, I got confidence in Hall or Eccles to step up because they got experience. So touch up on your thoughts of the depth at the cornerback position. I also want to get your thoughts of Michael Carter II, because I think he is one of the most underappreciated players on this defense that's going to be starting at the nickel.
Yeah, and it's like a good point in terms of like kind of the Jets going into the year of last year with like just young corners, because like now they're battle tested. Like there's a difference between having youth and like potential players, but not really seeing what they are on the field. And the Jets, they didn't sign like that Steven Nelson or one of the older corners like coming into the league last year, and they really let their guys kind of go through the fire, which is the best way to learn. Like you can learn in the meeting rooms and on the sideline, but nothing is like lining up against Stephon Diggs twice a year. There's just nothing like that you can replicate at practice or anything like that. So to have guys who are battle tested as depth, and it's not like they were terrible last year. Like yeah, obviously they underperformed to like starting level corners, but Brandon Eccles, a 6th round pick, he played really well for a 6th round pick. Like that is a home run hit for Joe Douglas. You're not expecting much from a 6th round pick. So if you can get a solid 4th or 5th corner in the 6th round, absolute slam dunk for him. And now he's again battle tested. Same thing with Breece Hall, which is great. And like you said, going to the year last year, like let's be honest, the Jets were a bottom 3 corner group in the NFL. Like they lacked a lot of talent, and now you're taking their starters from last year and pushing them back. For a guy in DJ Reed, who, again, I'm pretty harsh on corners, and I love DJ Reed. I love his game. Then you add Sauce Gardner, again, obviously love his game. So you're adding 2 guys who could legitimately be a plus cornerback group in the league, which is so far away from where we were last year. And just saying a plus group in the league is kind of not diminishing what they can be, because I want to set realistic expectations in terms of them having a learning curve. But if they both hit their ceilings, DJ Reed transitions well and Sauce Gardner hits his ceiling, you're looking at a top 10 duo with those 2 guys at corner, like legitimately. And then Michael Carter II, again, he had some bumps and bruises. He also was put in a tough position last year, though, too, because they had some tough matchups in terms of the tight ends. And you saw him like lining up on Kyle Pitts or on Dawson Knox, and he's not the biggest guy, so he was kind of beat a little bit, and that might have skewed his numbers, but he's not supposed to be lining up against tight ends. But he's, again, another guy, versatile, smart guy who can play a little bit of safety in there if you want to find a way to get Breece Hall on the field in certain looks. It's not going to happen a lot where you have Breece Hall as a 3rd corner, but you could do it if you move him to safety for maybe 4 or 5 reps a game, like nothing crazy. So the starters, really comfortable with him. Carter's going to take have a lump or 2 as well in his 2nd year. He's not fully developed, but then the depth of Hall at 4, Eccles at 5, and even Guidry. Like Guidry started for us a couple of years ago, and he was pretty good. Those last, I think, it's like 4 or 5 games of 2019, right? Or 2020. So the group is stacked with some talent that could be really, really good top end talent and depth. So complete turnover with this group. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think this is the one position group where Joe Douglas just deserves so much credit, because outside of the additions of DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, all the guys that we're talking about are late picks. Breece Hall, 5th round, Eccles, 6th round, Michael Carter II, 5th round, Guidry, undrafted free agent. Even Isaiah Dunn got burned last year. He was an undrafted free agent. And then those are all depth. And now he goes out there and spends the 4th overall pick on Sauce and then pays DJ Reed to come in here. So absolutely love the job that Joe Douglas has done with the cornerback room, and I'm really excited to see what they do in this year and, of course, beyond. So now let's get into the 10th overall pick, Joe, because it's funny that you did touch on Garrett Wilson a little bit, and you said the same thing that I thought. You said 90% of Jets fans were pumped up about Garrett Wilson because we got a receiver, but there was a voice, in the back of our head, we're like, wait a second. We got a corner and a receiver. That's 2 needs, but the edge is one of the biggest pieces to this defense that we're missing. If we do not get an edge, this defense is not going to thrive. Robert Saleh needs a young blue chip prospect to develop, but the Joe Douglas-led Jets, we'll get into it later on, they got their edge eventually. So let's break down Garrett Wilson. What's your expectations for him in year number 1? Do you think that he can be a guy like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in terms of being really good right away. And no, he's not going to have a Jamar Chase level season because that's an outlier, right? I'm not putting that expectations on him. My question is, does he have the talent to be an immediate impact as a rookie while still having some rookie hiccups, but putting up numbers right away?
Yeah, and like you said with the edge, which we'll get into, but I cannot. If the group works out, like I cannot wait to not say the name John Abraham again. Like we've been talking about John Abraham for 20 years now. So like I just can't wait to not have to mention him in terms of the Jets not having an edge rusher since him. Like hopefully in a couple of years, like, oh, the Jets haven't had an edge rusher since Jermaine Johnson, and it's been 2 years, you know. So like hopefully it works out like that. But yeah, Garrett Wilson. So I'll be completely honest. Receiver at 10 wasn't my most ideal thing because or position to pick at 10 because comparing this receiver at the top of it to years past with the CeeDee Lambs and Ruggs, obviously minus the off the field stuff, and like CeeDee Lamb, Judy, Jamar Chase, Waddle, Smith. I didn't think they stacked up there, so I didn't think it was really worth it at 10 to take a receiver. But when you take Garrett Wilson, the benefit of having the depth and some of the players that the Jets do now have on the roster is that you have, Uzama, you have Conklin, you have the running game, you have Corey Davis, you have Elijah Moore. So he's not going to be thrown into a position where he needs to produce immediately. Like in years past, we had David Nelsons and Chancey Stuckeys and Jeremy Curley's as the number one. He's not going to be put in that position like we'd expect in years past. So he's going to have some time to brew. And to learn and not be forced to be in that position. Now, do I think he has a talent to be an upper echelon guy? I don't think he's going to be Jamar Chase immediately because Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase. Like he's a little bit of an enigma. I don't know if that's the right word, but you're not going to see that often. But with Wilson, his ceiling is very high, and I've compared him multiple times to Odell Beckham in terms of his fluidity and his movement skills. Different players, but in terms of the explosion they have, in terms of the yak, in terms of the ability to go up and get the ball, in terms of the explosion in the routes, he has a very, very high ceiling. So it's exciting to see, or it's going to be exciting to see where he lands in terms of his ceiling. So definitely excited for it. Again, if they're forcing him into a position where he had to produce immediately, I wouldn't be as excited. But the fact that he can brew, I'm definitely excited for. He has some things to work on. Releases, I think he's a little bit overrated in terms of his releases. I think he has good releases, but he needs to close off his chest more consistently. You're going to see him get hit in the chest a lot in the releases and not allow himself to stack. And then also getting vertical versus press coverage, he needs to work on that a little bit too, because you can see him get jammed up and bowed out. So I think early on he's a slot player or a bunch player where he's not going to have to face press, but those are things he can work on in the first couple of weeks, months of the season, and then obviously work past it because he has the ability to be an all-around guy. So
yeah, I agree, man. I feel like Garrett Wilson, he's one of those players that can be our number one receiver in the next couple of years. And the cool thing about it is we potentially already have a number one receiver on the roster with Elijah Moore. So I want to get your thoughts of the wide receiver room as a whole with Garrett Wilson being added on. And he was the only new player that we added in the wide receiver room outside of bringing back Braxton Berrios. Obviously, we move on from Jamison Crowder. He's with the Bills. Keelan Cole, I don't even think he signed anywhere else. So what's your thoughts about the Jets receiving room, with the top five being Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, and Denzel Mims?
Yeah, and kind of and looking at the receiver group too, like in transitioning back to praise for Joe Douglas, like thank God we took a receiver at 10 because you had London go 8 and then the run started after Garrett Wilson and with Garrett Wilson as well. So they wouldn't have really been able to trade up and get their guys. So kudos to Joe Douglas for seeing that and taking that receiver at 10. In terms of the group, Elijah Moore, like you're wearing his jersey. I have his jersey. There's a reason why. This guy towards the end of the year before his injury, he looked like a player who could be a legitimate number one. Like people, I know we talk about, wanting that number one this offseason, which we would have liked because then you have two number ones, great, who cares? But Elijah Moore has the potential to be that. Corey Davis is a guy who I think is being a little bit underrated by Jets fans at this point. I think that he's a solid number 2 receiver. And the problem with him last year was when Zach Wilson's struggling, his drops are going to be overemphasized because when Zach Wilson's completing the ball 15, 20 yards down the field and then it's dropped, people are going to get pissed because he's not doing that often. So I think Corey Davis had a down year in terms of drops, but he'll come back to his norm, which is, not bad hands, but not the best in the world, but nothing like last year. So I think you have a solid 2 there, a potential 1 in in Elijah Moore. Garrett Wilson as the 3 is one of the best 3s we've had in quite a bit. Obviously, he's going to take his lumps, like you said, in the first couple of weeks and have to learn a little bit. Past that, I like Berrios as the 4, to be completely honest. I would like to see another depth receiver. Nothing crazy, no big-time guys, but even like bringing back Keelan Cole. Because last year we were talking about, okay, we have Crowder, we have Cole, we have all these guys, and still towards the end of the year against the Bucs and some of these teams, we were lining up with Tyreek Black, Jeff Smith, and all these guys. So, like, you want depth. We're going to have injuries. We can't act like they're all 3 of these guys are going to be healthy all year. So, one of them goes down. I don't want Berrios as the 3, Jeff Smith as the 4. So just add a Keelan Cole, just somebody there to take the pressure off and not have to see Jeff Smith, really line up and take any significant snaps. So high potential group, group that's relatively deep, but could still use a guy. But I'm definitely excited for the star potential in this group.
So a name you forgot to mention, and I'm curious to get your thoughts of him, is Denzel Mims. Do you think that he has any chance? Because obviously his story did not live up to the expectations as a second round pick. I was excited when we drafted him. After his rookie season, I felt like he showed flashes. And then year number 2 was just a big disappointment, whether it's, the whole coaching staff not giving him any opportunities. And then earlier in the season, everyone's like, oh, where's Mims? And then Mims gets the opportunities. He plays like 5 straight weeks and simply just does not capitalize on that opportunity. And now going into year number 3, there's a lot of buzz around him, according with Daniel Jeremiah, that he's off the charts in terms of, his workout, and Joe Douglas is excited about him. So are you expecting anything from Denzel Mims in year number 3, or do you think this ship has already sailed?
Yes, I obviously we want to buy into the optimism, these guys saying oh, he's a great workout guy and all this stuff, but let's not act like that could easily also be the media hyping him up for Joe Douglas and then he's traded now for a 4th round pick. It could easily be that as well, trying to pump him up a little bit, or it could be the coaches trying to pump him up a little bit and see if they get something out of him. There's so many different tactics you could take in terms of those statements and what's actually happening behind the scenes. But like you said, year 1 when he was with Joe Flacco against the Chargers and the Dolphins, I believe it was the Dolphins, the Pats, he legitimately impressed. And we thought he was coming into year 2, he was a part of that group. We have Mims, we got Crowder, we got Cole, we got Corey Davis. This is, obviously Elijah Moore. This is going to be a great group. And then Mims, he finished with 8-9 receptions in the entire year. When he came in, he was getting penalties, lining up wrong and all this stuff. So it was a complete 180 in terms of his trajectory from the end of his rookie year. So he has the potential. A lot of guys have the potential, though. There's plenty of guys who are rocked up, tall, who have explosion, who have the ability to catch the ball outside of out of their frame. But it's the mentality that makes a lot of these guys. It's 90% mentality with football players. There's a lot of freak athletes out there. So can he bounce back from whatever was wrong last year? The food poisoning happened, the missed practices, being behind in the playbook. Can he overcome that? I think there's a possibility he can. Am I betting my house on it? I'm not. I want to be positive, but after looking at last year, which is the worst possible year you could have, again, a lot of potential. But when Tyreek Black and Jeff Smith are seeing reps over you at the end of the year, and you're sitting on the bench when the Jets are down to their 6th, 7th receivers, it's not the best sign in the world. So he has potential to do it. Will he? There's a chance, but again, I'm not gonna necessarily bet on it. But with that being said, am I hoping for it? Hell yeah, because if you add Mims to this on his trajectory, and even if he's just a solid number 2, I'm not direct player comparison for one, and every reason I hate it no matter what. People are gonna like it, what I'm gonna say, or hate it. But even if he could be a Devontae Parker, not even, maybe that's even a little bit of a reach, but a guy who can get 700-800 yards is a 2 or a 3. Massive difference for a guy who people are talking about trading for a 5th round pick right now. So I'm really hoping that he bounces back, because this receiver group at that point would be pretty stacked.
Yeah, and I agree. Joe Douglas has drafted 3 receivers, and all 3 of those receivers came in the first 2 rounds. His first one was Denzel, then Elijah Moore, and then he gets Garrett Wilson. So, I don't really have high expectations for Denzel at all this year. I just feel like it's up to him to really – and you said it best, man. It's all up here with him. There's no denying he has the physical talent. He has the athleticism. He has the ability to go up there and grab the ball. I just think he needs to really get a good grasp of the playbook and put his mind properly, because you can be the most physically talented player out there, but if your mind's not all there, then you're not going to be able to be a successful football player. So let's move on to the Jermaine Johnson pick. This is a guy that, obviously a lot of Jets fans wanted. He's a guy that got coached by the Jets at the Senior Bowl. So there's a lot of buzz surrounding Jermaine Johnson and the New York Jets leading up to the draft, that he could potentially be the pick at 4 or even 10, and the Jets eventually move up to get him at 26. So what's your thoughts about Jermaine Johnson? I've heard that you're not the highest of Jermaine in terms of his film, and you prefer Karlaftis. So why don't you elaborate on Jermaine Johnson and your thoughts when you watch his film?
Yeah. So, and again, like I'll want to preface this before I even start talking about his film and all this stuff. There's a very large difference between getting a guy at 4, which people are talking about for a little while, like, oh, let's grab Jermaine Johnson at 4, let's grab him at 10. I was not about that. Like, I'll be completely honest. And it, again, recorded, it's great because it's out there. And I watched him both pre and post Senior Bowl, and I thought his value was a late teens, early 20s guy in this draft, and maybe even a little bit higher because the draft wasn't the most top heavy. So I expect him mid teens type of pick. Taking him at 10 wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world because I need that edge rusher. It would have been like a lukewarm pick for me at 10 because I didn't think he was worth the value. Getting him at 26 is a completely different ballgame. Like you're getting a steal there because I thought he was going to go earlier than that. Especially all the media buzz, I thought he'd be a top 10, at least top 15 pick. So to get him there, couldn't be more happy. I think he's going to come in. I think he has a relatively high floor because he has the ability in the run game. And I know people don't want to hear that, but we struggled in the run game last year. He's a good run defender, so right there, he's starting from a good spot. In the rush, I think he has the explosion. I think he has the length. I think he has the power. I think he has the tenacity. The thing with, and if you, I'm sure you pulled up or you've seen his stats of like him not winning between 1.6 and 2.5 seconds, which in the NFL, if you don't win quick, you're not winning because the ball is out so quick in the modern NFL. You have to get there really quickly, and he wasn't doing that. Why wasn't he doing that? I know some plays he was containing, he was just playing the run, but a lot of his game was dictated on taking like 2 or 3 hard steps up the arc and just pitter pattering his feet and waiting for the guy to screw up. And then getting to the quarterback with tenacity and with effort and some relatively good technique. But again, you can't pitter patter your feet in the NFL. You have to get there immediately. So you have to have a plan that's going to work. You can't figure out as you go type of deal unless you obviously get shut down, which shouldn't be your primary plan to get shut down. So I think he has to develop in terms of a more decisive pass rush repertoire. I think he has to work. Like there are some plays, like you see the plays of him playing Miami where like the tackles, just to be completely honest, you're going to bring me on, I'm always going to be honest. The Miami tackles had terrible technique, like terrible, and the plays weren't replicatable for Jermaine Johnson. So one play, the highlight play, you see him kind of like come in, get under the pads of the tackle spins around, he gets the strip sack for like a touchdown, whatever it was. It's not going to happen in the NFL. It's just not. So he has to refine leverage, elbows being tight, quarter turns, all the little stuff we talk about on my show. But overall, again, pick at 26, a guy with the explosion, with the length, with the power, with the tenacity, with the smarts and a good run defender. I think that he could be a very good pick for the Jets. And again, 4'10", 26, way different, but I like it.
Yeah, I mean, for the Jets to get their guy that there's so much buzz around and then moving up to get him at 26 and the value, like you said, it's just incredible. It kind of reminded me of last year with Elijah Vera Tucker when the Jets traded up to get him. When we saw the Jets on the clock, all of a sudden we kind of had a feeling of who was going to be, and the same thing happened in this year with the New York Jets and Joe Douglas getting their guy in Jermaine Johnson. So let's transition to the next player, and a guy with the Jets almost traded up for again in the first round, and they tried to come away with 4 first-round picks, which is mind-boggling, and that's for a position that is being a little devalued as we get a little further in the NFL in today's world. Back then. And when I say back then, I mean like just 4 or 5 years ago, there's running backs being drafted in the top 10. There's running backs getting paid, but now it kind of feels like the running back position is being a little devalued. So what's your thoughts about the Jets not only investing a top pick in Breece Hall at the running back position, being in the top of the second round, but number 1, attempting to trade back into the first round for him and still trading up and burning a 5th round pick to get Hall? Do you think he's that good of a prospect to really get him there that early in the draft?
Yeah, well, like when you look at some of the like running backs in the past couple of years that were drafted in the first round, I know it's a different NFL, but like guys like Gurley, Gordon, Zeke was a really high pick, Najee Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs. There's been plenty of guys drafted in the first round who I feel like are just as talented or similarly talented to Breece Hall. So I think if you're going 5-10 years ago, he is a first round pick. Now, obviously the NFL has de-emphasized the running game, but have the Jets? Adding these tight ends, adding this offensive line, like there's a difference between high investment in a running back when you have a bad offensive line like the Jets did when they got Le'Veon Bell. Bad offensive line, good running back, high paid running back is not a recipe for success in terms of like spending your capital wisely. But bringing in Breece and having Michael Carter already, and now they're playing behind an offensive line which should be top 10-ish this year, assuming they're healthy, with tight ends who. Again, let's be honest with the tight ends. Like we haven't had a guy as good as Conklin or Uzama since probably Dustin Keller. Like I know we had that one year with Austin Seferian-Jenkins, but still, like we have 2 solid tight ends now with Rucker, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I'm sure. So to invest in the running back position, behind a good offensive line with a rookie quarterback it's smart to me. It's again, when it came on the board, I was kind of like, really, like Breece Hall, like interesting. But then you think about it, like that was kind of the final piece on offense that we needed to address. Like I know every player is not going to work out. You know, Becton might not work out. Wilson might not work out. Like we have to be a little bit realistic. But with that being said, at every position we have encouragement from youth or like high capital in terms of like spending on like Tomlinson, Becton, whoever it is. Like we kind of filled every single spot, and we'll see how it works out from there. The biggest hole after the first round was backup running back to me. So I thought it was going to be like a third or fourth round guy, not freaking Breece Hall, like the best running back in the draft. So now you add him, you're assuming him like a first round pick type running back, should be a top 10 to 15 guy, right? And then you have Michael Carter last year, who balled out. Like he had some injuries, but he balled out. And like now we're talking about him behind a better offensive line with a better quarterback, with better weapons, taking away the emphasis on the defense, trying to defend the run game. And it's going to help out the offense a lot. It's going to help out Zach Wilson a lot. Now we're going to see a lot more 2nd and 4s, 2nd and 3s, a lot of play action deep shots, because how many times in years past has it been 2nd and 11, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, because we cannot run the ball. So now we're going to see an efficient run game, and Zach Wilson having a lot of pressure off his back. Like he's not going to have to throw the ball 30, 35 times, 40 times in some games. There's been games where he's throwing the ball 20 times because we're just dominating in the ground game, and that's the same recipe we had in 2010. So let's do it again now with even more explosive talent at receiver, and what we hope is a much better quarterback than Mark Sanchez. So again, a little bit confused at the pick of the time, but you really look into it. You're really surrounding Zach Wilson with everything he could possibly ask for.
So to keep up the topic of Hall and the running game and the offensive line and Michael Carter, so you look at this offensive line on paper, and obviously it comes down to health, but what's your expectations with this run game? I just want you to elaborate on that. On top of Lincoln Tomlinson's addition, who's a Pro Bowl guard, Elijah Vera-Tucker being over to right guard in year number 2, with the addition of Uzomah and Conklin and Ruckert, who all, are decent run blockers, who's going to help in the run game, with the addition of Hall and Carter going into year number 2, and Tevin Coleman being brought back as that veteran, is it hard to say that if everything is healthy, right? Everyone's healthy, the Jets could have a top 10 run game in the league?
Yeah, like last year, again, like we at the end of the year and even points in the middle of the year, like with Mike White and all these guys playing, like the run game was the thing that was really propelling us. Like even the Bengals, like I know it was a lot of screens and stuff. That's still like to me like an attachment of the run game, screen passes and things like that. So it has potential with adding now Lincoln Tomlinson, with Becton coming back. Like we're talking about the run game, Becton wasn't even here. Like remember Becton in his first year, in the run game, like dominating guys. You bring in Lincoln Tomlinson, who's a Pro Bowl level guard. You have ABT next year in development. George Fant, who I know is not a young player, but still, this is only his now going to be 3rd or 4th year like starting, so he's still developing even at an older age, 29, 30, older age. And you have McGovern with guys even better next to him, than last year. So you have an offensive line that should be in that top 10 level, and then you're taking a running scheme with a Shanahan scheme that is very successful. It's been throughout the league, and you're pairing that with 2 running backs who are both 1A, 1B running backs in the NFL. So like if you just break down the group of running back, like how many guys or how many teams in the league have a 1-2 better than the Jets? I know there's teams with Kamara, with Dalvin Cook, but in terms of 1-2, there's not a lot of better 2s than Michael Carter. So you have that, you can ride the hot hand. These guys are rested. The offensive line, if healthy, should be probably even a better run blocking group than a pass blocking group in terms of having Lincoln Tomlinson, who's a little bit inconsistent in passing game. Same thing with Becton. But in terms of running, and block guys and base block them and throwing them 10 yards, like they could do that. So like you said, this run game, if it's not at the minimum top half of the league, that's a massive disappointment, but I'm expecting them to be near top 10 as well. And that's surrounding your quarterback with that, your young quarterback with a great running game. Couldn't ask for more success. And then, like you said, you add in Tomlinson and Conklin Conklin and Uzomah and Ruckert, guys who can all block now. We're looking at going from guys like, in past years, Kellen Davis, and last year of Croft and Griffin, to these guys. Like now we're talking about some guys who could legitimately block. And when you have 12, 13 personnel, guess what? There's no tip-off. There's no, Ruckert coming to the game, it's going to be a pass. Or, Uzomah's coming to the game, it's going to be a run, because they could do everything. So you're adding so much flexibility to this offense with all the additions they made, both from the running backs, tight ends, and the offensive line.
And I'm so happy you brought up the 2009-10 season. That's what it was all about. Mark Sanchez as a rookie and as a sophomore was behind one of the best offensive lines of football in terms of running the ball. And all he had to do was hand the ball off, throw the ball 20, 25 times a game, and they had a top 5 defense. And that's how we went to the AFC Championship back-to-back seasons. Hey, man, Zach Wilson, you're number 2. He's got all the protection now. He's got the running game. He's got, an improving defense. I don't think we were expecting his defense to be top 5. But I do love the approach that they're giving a dominant run game, because that's what I remember in my young years of being a Jets fan, of falling in love with this team, is running the ball down your throats. And I'm super excited to see what they do. Now, getting into the next player is Jeremy Ruckert, the Long Island, New York Jets fan growing up 20 minutes from me. And this is one of my favorite picks, Joe, because, going into this process, I would just be like, man, I would absolutely love Jeremy Ruckert on the Jets. But after we saw them sign both Conklin and Uzama, I kind of felt like, man, they're not going to release, prioritize the tight end position in the draft. Trey McBride is a guy I loved. It was either McBride or Ruckert. Those are the 2 tight ends I really wanted the Jets to get. But they still come away with Jeremy Ruckert at the back end of the 3rd round, somebody that can pretty much do it all, and I think could potentially be the future of this tight end position. So what's your expectations and your thoughts of the pick from Jeremy Ruckert?
Again, I think it's the Jets just going like BPA, and people, again, we're not used to having depth. So it's like, oh, well, where is he going to play? It's like, oh, well, when Uzama is gone in a year or two, maybe he's here for 5 years, but just assuming he's going to be gone in a couple of years because he is, 31, 30-ish years old, and he's had some injuries. And then Ruckert steps in, he starts playing like, oh my God, look at Ruckert. Yeah, that's what you draft for depth, and you draft for future needs, not necessarily needs you have right now. So take BPA, guys you think you can make an impact in a few years, and even like pass just an impact in a few years. The Jets want to run a lot of 12. They're even gonna see some reps where it's 13 personnel. If Uzama goes down and you don't have Ruckert, then guess what? Now you're handcuffing Mike LaFleur again, because you don't have that second, third guy who you really like. No discredit to Yeboah or West or anything like that, but I don't think they're worth getting on the field over Garrett Wilson or Braxton Berrios if you were running 11 or 10 personnel. So adding another piece to the group, one, adds depth and flexibility with injuries, which we're going to assume are going to happen. Just hopefully not as brutal as years past, but there's going to be some injuries. And like you said, in terms of a Jets fan favorite type of pick, his family seems so diehard. It would basically be like one of you or I having a son and then, oh, now he's a Jets player. Can you imagine that feeling in that family and the excitement? So I think Jets fans are going to absolutely love this guy, a guy who's underutilized at Ohio State, but has the tenacity as a blocker. He has some things to clean up, but has a tenacity there, clean up some technical things. Great. I think he's a little bit smoother in the pass game than some people realize. He's a good ability to catch balls outside of his frame, contested catches, things like that. And again, just like with Wilson, he's not going to be the number 1 tight end. How many, years past, you rewind 3, 4, 5 years ago, we drafted a guy in the 4th round. Oh, well, he's our starter now. He has the time to brew. And the Jets have screwed up a lot of players in the past because of that, because we've had such a crappy roster that high draft picks, or even in the top 4, are automatically pushed into starting roles, and that can stunt a guy's development if you do that. So giving these guys time to develop, maybe we saw Chris Herndon be a better player if he wasn't thrusted into the number 1 role, immediately. But yeah, Ruckert, fan favorite pick. I hope he's the tight end in the future of the Jets, because a hometown kid catching touchdowns at MetLife Stadium would be thrilling. I'm already thinking about should I order his jersey? Should I do a T-shirt? I want Ruckert to be good so bad. So again, adding more to a tight end group that is going to be tight end heavy, complete, again, 180, just like corner from last year. You go into last year, and I always say this, it's kind of one of the things I always say, rookie quarterback, his best friend's a tight end. Rookie OC, coming from a Shanahan system, tight ends are going to be his best friend. We threw those guys into the season last year trying to run 12 personnel. I think we're the number 1 in the league the first 4 weeks of the season, 30%, with Ryan Griffin and Trayvon Wesco and Tyler Kroft. It's just not fair. So now to add these guys, I couldn't be any more ecstatic. And again, guess what? We're helping out Zach Wilson. If we're going to take a couple of lumps on defense because we're helping out Zach Wilson, I couldn't care any less. Let's give him all the talent he needs.
That's a great point. And the big criticism I had, and I said this multiple times on my streams, with Joe Douglas, was he ignores the tight end position. The past 2 years, leading up to this offseason, obviously, it's just he doesn't prioritize a tight end. He doesn't sign a big name or a decent tight end in free agency. He doesn't draft one. He waits to the undrafted free agency pool to get one. We're going into last year with Tyler Kroft and Ryan Griffin, and it was just really upsetting. And going into the season, I said Joe Douglas needs to overhaul this position. He needs to draft and sign multiple guys. And what does he do? He brings in 2 big-time free agents, veterans that got a lot of time. And CJ Uzama, I think, is going to have a way bigger impact on this team off the field than on the field. Not saying he's not going to be a great player for us, but I feel like his culture and his demeanor and his leadership abilities, I mean, he was a big reason why that Bengals offense was really good, right? On paper, you see the stats, he wasn't lighting it up, but he was Joe Burrow's security blanket. He was that captain of the offense. He was that player that was, hyping them up in the locker room before the games. He's someone that Zach Wilson and this young offense kind of needs on offense to be that guy to look up towards, that guy to really, hype them up. And then Conklin, when he got the tight end over there in Minnesota, forgot his name, I think it was Irvin Smith, got injured.
Yeah.
Conklin subbed in, and Conklin was like looking like a decent tight end. So now all of a sudden the Jets are 3 deep, and I'm just so happy that Douglas, I always said the one criticism I had was him ignoring the tight end position, and now he just completely overhauls it.
Yeah, and like I said, like it's not maybe it's not like credit to these guys, but maybe it's like more about the Jets' past. But our number 1 and 2 are the best ones we've had in a decade. Like, and that's not hyperbole. Like, we've been really bad at the tight end position. So to add 2 guys who are that, like, and I'm not even saying they're superstars. Like, they're just like, they could be average level tight ends, like starting tight ends.
To be.
And that is great. That's a huge step in the right direction. And I like Uzama. I really didn't think he was going to come here. I thought he was going to sign back with the Bengals. I'm not really sure what happened there behind the scenes. So I like him. And the leadership he brings too. Like, I think people start to overlook like the actual team aspect that comes into football. Like, oh, just get an individual player who doesn't necessarily gel with the team. Like,
exactly.
We're talking about a leader. Like, if I know he's not George Kittle, but in terms of the mentality he has, how nice of a guy he is, how much he's praised, like, is there a better guy for Rucker to walk into the locker room than with Uzama? Like, I don't know if there's much better guys out there to teach him. So really happy about that. But then even more so, and I've been known to call out some players. So when I'm positive about one, like, hopefully it means something. I really like Conklin. Like, I really, really like that signing in terms of his receiving ability, his route running, his hands, his tenacity, his one-on-one and pass blocking. There's reps I have of him blocking Chandler Jones himself. So, and again, he's not going to do every rep, but you can actually ask him to do that and not be completely kind of screwed. So I really like the tight end group. And then again, having Ruckert there as a developmental guy to take over in a couple of years or come in to play 25% of the snaps in a game is going to be very, very exciting for the Jets.
Yeah, man, the tight end position is going to be a lot of fun, and the 12 personnels with LaFleur is going to be fun because we all know he started to do that in the beginning of the season last year, and he realized, like, wait, I don't have the personnel to run this, so we had to do something else. So I'm sure LaFleur was in Joe Douglas's ear before the offseason. Hey, Joe, get me some tight ends because you have no idea what I can do if we have decent tight ends. It's exactly what Joey D has done. So, Joe, to finish off the draft, Joe Douglas went out there and got 2 players in the trenches. One being a Max Mitchell and one being a Michael Clemens. We'll start off with Max Mitchell, the first offensive line, the only offensive lineman that Joe Douglas drafted in the 2022 class. Do you think that Max Mitchell has a chance to be, a player that you are comfortable being the swing tackle this year and his development for the future, being that guy that can be versatile all over the line? I heard him speak to the media saying that he has experience at left tackle, right tackle, and he can kick inside at right guard and left guard. So what's your expectations for Max Mitchell, not only in his rookie season, but beyond in his development?
Yeah, and there's like a couple of words you threw into there are key in terms of like development and comfortability with him being this backup swing tackle. Right now, I'm not comfortable with him being the backup swing tackle, but that's because he's a rookie. Like, he's a 4th-round rookie. We have to have real expectations. Like, he's not going to step in if Becton gets injured and dominate. So you want to give him a little bit of time to develop. So a Morgan Moses-like signing would be really good for this team because, listen, like, however you feel about Becton, I know people are on completely different sides of it. He, even in his rookie year, he played like 13-ish games and came out a couple like for a drive or for a series or for a half, whatever it was, because of injury. So I think if you're like being optimistic with Becton or even a kind of realistic, like 14, 13 games with him this year would be a good number. So who's going to come in from those other games? Max Mitchell for 3, 4, 5 games? I'm not as comfortable with it because he's a rookie, but in terms of developing into one, different ballgame. In terms of the quickness in his feet, his change up in his hands, his pass setting is good. Run game needs a little bit of work. I don't think he's a guard. I think he's a little bit light in the pants and will get kind of thrown around a little bit in the inside. But if you're talking about a 4th-round pick who ends up being a versatile swing tackle for the Jets, it's a good pick. Like, every player is not going to be a starter, and if you can get one of the most important positions on the team that's not a starter, quarterback, backup swing tackle, like 2 of the biggest positions you're going to get, and to fill that with a 4th-round guy, I thought was a smart move. A lot of talk has been out there about Joe Douglas and addressing the offensive line, and we've invested a lot of high capital from $10 million, about for McGovern, for Fant, 1st-round picks in AVT, in Becton. Like, they needed to invest some lower tier capital into guys who can potentially develop. I think Max Mitchell is that. I'm just not comfortable right now with him being the backup swing tackle.
So to finish off the draft class, Joe Douglas went to the trenches and got another player on the defensive line. And I feel like this is a guy that Robert Saleh had everything to do with making sure that he's a Jet. He just screamed a guy that Robert Saleh wants on his defensive line. Yeah. Physical, violent, plays with power. You saw him in the press conference. He has that goofy business personality where he's just like all about business. He can make you laugh, but when he puts a helmet on, and as Robert Saleh said, he goes to a very dark place. And he's also becoming a player that's being talked about in the media just because of that press conference. So what's your expectations for Michael Clemens? Because I personally feel like this could be a player that could be making an impact in year one, because he's going to be 25 as a rookie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the thing about like the 25, which I do get, but you have him on for like 4-year contracts, and if he's coming into the NFL, which obviously a more grueling game, it's not like he's 25 and has played 4 years in the NFL, you know. So yeah. He has a little bit less like mileage and people would think he did. And even if he is just here for for a contract and another contract, like if he plays until 28, 29 and he's an effective player, who's to say he can't be effective until he's 32? So I'm not overly concerned about the age, especially for a guy who is a 4th round draft pick, you know. And with him, like, I think the two things I've been saying a lot about him when asked about him is, like, one, the guy's a psychopath, which you need some psychopaths. Like Sauce Gardner came out and said, like, he is the guy you want to go into war with. And like, you need some, like, for lack of a better term, like those like war daddies up front, like the guys who are going to smack people in the mouth. And he is that. And like, you hear him kind of say that as well in his interviews in terms of saying, you know, again, I'm not verbatim on the exact quote, but he says that, you know, basically guys are going to respect you quickly after you hit him in the mouth a couple times. And I love that mentality, like the early, like grinded out type football. So you're adding him to another group that is really deep. Like this defensive line is ridiculously deep. Like not only do you bring in Clemens to be a backup rusher, you have Jermaine Johnson obviously maybe be a starter early on. We'll see. But then you have Vinny Curry. You have Clemens. You have Bryce Huff. You bring in Martin from the Texans, who is an uber athlete. Like no matter, like, obviously he's not going to come in and start or get 12 sacks or anything like that. But in terms of athleticism at any position on the Jets team, he is a super athlete. So you put him on 3rd down just to rush the passer, he's going to be an exciting player too. And then you look at the interior defensive line with Q and JFM and hopefully Ogunjobi and all these guys, like they have just rusher upon rusher. So he's going to play 30-40% of the reps and just go after it. Like this is a guy who is absolutely just going to grind. And I think if you develop him a little bit farther, like he's a guy who could be an eventual starter because he has that mindset in the run game. Like he's not just a pass rush specialist. Like he wants to smack the guy in the mouth next to him and control the ground game as well. So I think he's a great move in terms of the mentality he brings, the development for the future where he can potentially be a starter for a couple of years or at least a really important role player. So not the pick we expected, but we shouldn't be surprised with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh wanting to adding more beef to the offensive line because of how much they rotate.
The depth on this defensive line is ridiculous. This is the one position group that Jets have always been good in, even though as a team we've not been good the past decade. But the defensive line has been the backbone of the identity for this New York Jets team. And it seems like they're not done adding it. And you see who the guy that they're bringing in. And if they get that man on top of Quinnen and JFM and the addition of Solomon Thomas, like this defensive line is so deep. And we all know that Saleh loves running that 10-man rotation, getting those fresh legs. So when it is late in the 4th quarter, we don't have tired pass rushers. They got fresh legs out there, hopefully getting to the quarterback and winning some games when it matters the most. Guys, if you're enjoying the stream and you want to see Joe on the channel more often, make sure you do me a favor and smash that thumbs up button. We got 160 people tuning in with 62 likes. Make sure you guys hit that like button. We got one more topic to get into, which is probably the most important one of the entire season, and I'm sure you can guess who we'll be talking about next. But before we do that, we got a super chat from Josh saying, good luck defending Waddle and Hill next season. Fins up. We got a Josh sending in a super chat. What's your thoughts about the Dolphins? Should we be worried about Jalen Waddle and Hill, Joe?
Yeah, so it seems like you have a very like AFC like East centric type show. I see a lot of like Dolphins fans and Bills fans, so I'm not going to say anything too like vulgar. So I want to keep it respectful, obviously all playful. But good luck, throwing deep ball to him with Tua's noodle arms. So if we just defend short to intermediate, they could run past our guys, and as long as we're short, they're not going to be able to hit them anyway. So yeah, short and the yak. Okay, I'm worried about him. Deep is what it is. Tua's not going to be able to get it there.
That's exactly what I said, because the reason why there's a lot of AFC East people in here is because I go live with the AFC East Roundtable. It's me, a Bills YouTuber, a Patriots YouTuber, and a Dolphins YouTuber, and we do like a roundtable every week during the season. So all those people come in here and talk their smack, and we got a lot of AFC East folks coming in here. But I appreciate the donation, Josh, and good luck to your Fins this year. It's going to be a great time going up against you guys 2 times a year. So, Joe, the last topic I have for you before I let you go, my man, I think you know who it's going to be about. It's the most important player. It's a guy coming off a rookie season where, didn't really do too much to really prove to be the guy yet. So what's your expectations for Zach Wilson in year number 2? Because I think we can all agree that Joe Douglas has done everything he can possibly do to give Zach Wilson the ammunition to take a huge step this season. I'm not expecting him to all of a sudden be an elite quarterback. I think, in my opinion, this is a time for him to step up, improve his game, improve to us Jets fans that he is a starting quarterback in this league. We got our guy, and there's still a lot of room for development, especially in year number 3 and 4 in the system. So what's your expectations for him in year number 2? By the end of the season, we can all say with a straight face, Zach Wilson is definitely our guy.
Yeah, and you know how it is. Like, we've been hoping for a quarterback for so long. Like, I saw you in Carolina last year, like getting off the elevator. We're all excited. He comes into that first game. Obviously, he struggles part of the offensive line. Next game, I don't know if you were at the home opener. I was. The energy in there was buzzing. And 3-4 picks, like almost immediately. It's like, dude, this is just so bad. So he started off the year terribly. Like, let's be honest. Like, let's quantify. Like, beginning of the year, he was just as bad as the Sanchez's, as the Genos, the Darnolds, all those guys. He was pretty terrible, even worse than some of those in their rookie years. But then his progression at the end of the year was really, it was really encouraging for me, because like even Sam Darnold at the end of his rookie year, like he had the Packers game, the Texans game. A lot of those like big flashy plays were broken. Like there were broken plays out of the pocket. That stuff's not really replicatable to me. Zach Wilson, when he was improving at the end of the year, it was in the pocket. It was making reads. It was being smooth in the pocket, stepping up in conflict climbs. It was hitting guys in stride with good timing, with good reading of the defense, fluid eyes. So, like, he took really, really good steps in the end of the year. Like the Jaguars game, I know he only threw for like 100 yards. Still, the process was really good of a lot of his plays. The Buccaneers game, like we mentioned multiple times, Tyreek Black and Braxton Berrios were like his number 1 and 2 guys that game, and he lit it up and almost beat the defending Super Bowl champions and Tom Brady. Obviously, then the end of the game happened, but that's not Zach Wilson's fault. So I expect him to be what he was at the end of the year and string that out through an entire season. If he does that, we're talking about a good quarterback, dude. Like, and I'm not, like you said, I'm not expecting him to be Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes. I think if you look at this offense and you look at the offensive line, which we discussed, the running game, the tight ends, the receivers, if he could be about average consistently, you're looking at a good offense. Like, I think it's unrealistic. It could happen for him to be a top 5 guy. But even if you get, and people are going to like hate when I say this name, but if you can get like a mid-tier quarterback, like a Kirk Cousins level, obviously a different player, but like as consistent as Kirk Cousins is like that 14th, 13th, 15th best quarterback in the league behind this offensive line, behind this offense, behind Mike LaFleur's mind, we could be very solid. I think that's enough for you to say, okay, Zach Wilson's taking steps in the right direction, because the thing is, like, progression isn't linear for everybody. Like Zach Wilson coming from BYU to the NFL, he had some larger hurdles to go over because of the difference in the competition. So I think he is going to be the quarterback for the future. And this year, at about average level, he's going to prove that he should be that guy year 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, leading us to a Super Bowl or 2. So I have some faith.
I love that. And we got another super chat from Josh. He comes in again saying, and remember, he's a Dolphins fan, I am low-key worried about the Jets for next season. In my opinion, Jets have one of the best drafts and now could be very dangerous. Joe, it's pretty crazy because I am on the AFC East roundtable. I get into a lot of, debates with division rivals, and we're getting love from the rivals. So what's your thoughts about Josh's take here from the Dolphins' perspective?
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate fans who are willing to come in the chats and actually be like cordial and have discussions, because like you'll have people like, oh, Zach sucks, and that's like they log off. So no, I appreciate people being cordial here. But the whole division, like our division's pretty stacked up. Like obviously the Bills might be the class of the AFC now. You have the Dolphins, who obviously moved on from their head coach, but they have talent. Like you're talking about Hill, Waddle. Some of the running backs they just added, improving the offensive line, like they should be pretty good. Again, I don't have the most faith in Tua. That's just me being honest. Their defense, in terms of like their corners, like pretty stacked up there. Good defensive line as well. So they're going to be an interesting battle for the Jets, and hopefully they can just take a game. Like we haven't won a division game in how many years now. So I'm hoping they can take at least a game from the Dolphins. But yeah, the respect is appreciated. And I think a lot of in years past, Jets fans have been so cautious to be optimistic because of how many times we've been burned. But there's a real reason now. And typically in the years past, like, the Jets are great, and all the other people in the NFL, like, they still suck. I'm like, no, they don't. Like, they're going to win. And now we're getting respect from other people for a reason, because they really have built it up the right way. So I'm excited to actually be able to compete game in, game out, hopefully be in the race in December, not looking at the draft in October. Again, to start the season, lose to the Panthers and Sam Darnold with Robbie Anderson doing the airplane, and then getting blown out versus the Pats, get blown out versus the Broncos, get blown out versus the Colts. Like, it's not going to be like that anymore. So I think there's a reason that fans are showing the Jets respect. And I think they're going to be a team to actually take seriously this year.
Yeah, I mean, please let that all happen. Josh, I appreciate the super chat. We got another one from Joey real quick. $5 super chat. He asks, Joe, do you believe Zach could throw for 27 touchdowns, 13 picks? Because those were Garoppolo's stats when he took the 49ers to the Super Bowl in 2019. So do you think these are realistic numbers for Zach in year number 2?
Yeah, and I don't think Joey's being like overly optimistic there. Like him cutting the interceptions to 13, like what was it, the last 5-6 weeks of the season, he didn't throw one pick. And again, that's with a lot less talent, in his rookie year. So surrounded by more talent and growing in the offense, he shouldn't be throwing that many picks. Like, even 13, I would hope is a little bit high, but I could live with 27 and 13, and that being an average type year for him, which again is that next step in development for him. And again, you're talking about that in an offense which should be pretty good. That's enough. And Garoppolo, like, listen, if he's Garoppolo in year 2, okay, not the best, but around this offense, I could live with it. And I think we all think at the end of the day, year 3, 4, 5. He's going to be much better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He has so much more talent than him. Like, you're just talking about the talent he has in his arm and the movement skills. Like, he has top 5 to 7 potential because of the talent he has just in that right shoulder and that right arm. So, but I would take that for now. I'd hope for a little bit better, but I think that's like the floor of what you want.
I couldn't agree more. We got another super chat real quick from V-Man. $5 donation. He says, I don't know why some Jets fans are worried about facing the Patriots week 1 when September is statistically their weakest month, not to mention Pat's weak team. So there's a lot of rumors. I'm sure you saw, Joe, and the schedule has not become finalized until tomorrow night. But there's a rumor that the Jets will be facing the New England Patriots week number 1, Sunday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What's your thoughts about that? Should we be worried, like V-Man says, or should we be excited for the opportunity to dethrone the Patriots on Sunday night primetime football right away?
Yeah, like, my hands are getting clammy, like, just thinking about the home opener. Like that juice coming to that stadium is going to be absolutely electric. Like, and it was electric last year. It was. Yeah. Like, if they would have beat them, it would have been crazy. This year, I think it's twofold. Like, the energy coming in is different now. Like, people are not going to be sitting on their phones and all this stuff. Like, I cannot wait to see, hopefully, that Sunday night game, because I know I'm going to park it. I know the parking lot probably opens at 4. I'm going somewhere at 1 right by the stadium, parking the bus I have, and we're starting early. We're starting a couple of hours early. So I am really, really excited to start the year off, and hopefully with the Pats on Sunday Night Football. I get, like, in years past, wanting the Jaguars or the Texans or one of these teams, but coming into the first game, opening up, beating the Pats would send a statement, and I really would enjoy that. Now, with that being said, in the back of my mind, I'm like, we opened the season last year against Bill Belichick. It didn't really work out the best. So to come in and with a little bit of that worry, if they are to pull it out and smack them around a little bit, Sunday Night Football, again, anniversary of 9/11, 22 years or 21 years at this point, would be electric for that stadium. Like, the amount of emotion would be ridiculous, especially if they come. They haven't won a September game since what, or home opener or opener since, I think, the Lions in 2018, wow. Right? It's been a really long time. It's been a really long time. So if they could pull that out versus the Pats, I want nothing more than to face them and send them to 0-1.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like this is the year for us to not be afraid, and for it to be on Sunday Night Football on the anniversary of 9/11. I mean, the first Sunday night game, I think, since 2011 for the Jets. We just are never on Sunday Night Football. Mm-hmm. Year 2 quarterback, Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. Oh my gosh, if that's the case, it's going to be crazy. The energy in MetLife, like you said, last year for the opener was insane. Wait for it to be, it's actually week 1 instead of week number 2. And oh my God. We got another super chat from Scott Wilson, $10. Thank you so much, my brother. I appreciate you. He says, year 2 in the Shanahan system jumps. 15, Atlanta had 21 points per game. 16, Atlanta had 34 points per game. 18, San Francisco, 21 points per game. 19, 29 points per game. And the Tennessee, 19 points per game. Tennessee, 25 points per game. 19 Green Bay, 24. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of, jumps and stats, and I know exactly what Scott's referring to. And the Jets had 18 points per game last year. So Joe, if you had to predict, how much points per game are the Jets putting up this year based on the year 2 of Shanahan systems jumps?
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I'm trying to like quantify, like, okay, what were these teams in each of these years? Did they get more talent? Obviously, it's really hard to do that quickly. But if they were at 18 points per game last year, the number that came to my head is 27 points per game for the Jets, which would finish us like, I don't know, like 11th in the league. I would sign up for that right now. So let's go 27 points per game for the Jets. 27
points per game. Book it. That is. I would absolutely love that. Scott, I appreciate the donation, my man. It means a lot to the channel. And the last question I have for you, Joe, it is going to be about Zach Wilson, right? You broke him down. You broke down everything you saw from him last year. What are the weaknesses and what are the things you want to see Zach Wilson improve on the most in your number 2? And also your thoughts of him getting a little more beefy, according to Robert Saleh. So do you think that's going to be a big impact of him adding on a couple more muscle going into your number 2, building into his body? And what do you want to see from him improve on in order for him to actually be the franchise quarterback for the Jets?
Yeah, no, it's good to get more beefy. Like it just is, like, I think people are starting to call him like Quadzilla, which is great right now. And just in terms of like we talked about Zach Wilson coming out of BYU, and what was like one of the biggest concerns, like, oh, he's a little frail for the NFL. Like, how's he gonna take hits? Building up that muscle, adding 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle in the next couple of years is big for him, because he's going to take, you want him to rebound from his hits. Obviously, hopefully he's not getting as hit as he was with the Panthers, against the Panthers last year, because that was ridiculous. But, you're going to have to take some hits from guys who are 270 pounds running 20 miles per hour at you. So you got to have add a little bit of beef. So I definitely like the fact that he's muscling up a little bit, which is good, because, 21 years old, he's going to get bigger, 24, 25, 26. He's going to look like a different kid. So it's good to see the dedication from him to build up that muscle. And then in terms of what he has to improve, it's a lot of stuff like in the pocket. Like you saw, and you saw this with him at BYU, and you see it from a guy like Mahomes. And again, not Mahomes, but like they have similar weakness in terms of not feeling comfortable in the pocket and bailing out of a pocket early instead of having condensed footwork, conflict climbing, keeping your eyes downfield. Zach Wilson wanted to bail a little bit too much, and that's why he got in trouble. And obviously the offensive line didn't help him, because there's guys coming from the interior all the time as well. But he has to trust his offensive line. I want to see more consistency with his reads. He would get locked onto a read for a little bit last year, not being kind of comfortable with what he's seeing throughout a play in terms of his read from 1 to 2 to 3 to back to 1, depending on the look, and he would struggle a little bit from that. But towards the end of the year, like I said, he was much more smooth and quick coming off of his reads. So I want to see the consistency with going through his reads, conflict climbs, and then you want to see his footwork improve a little bit. It's a very slight problem, but it's going to affect him on every 1 in 10 throws, because he has a problem with locking out his lead foot, which doesn't allow his hips to come over and rotate, and he kind of kicks back and it sends his arm a little bit off whack. But that's stuff that's the quarterback coach can hopefully fix. But again, it's not going to affect him too greatly, even if he doesn't. So it's a lot about reads and comfortability in the pocket for Zach Wilson year 2.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's all about his pocket presence, and you alluded to it earlier. That game against Tampa Bay is what we want to see from Zach Wilson. He did that with all the talent around him being decimated. I mean, imagine when he actually has talent that he's comfortable with, and actually good players like Garrett Wilson healthy, Elijah Moore and Corey Davis and all these guys. Joe, I appreciate you a lot for hopping on the stream. I was expecting to go like 40 minutes. We're at an hour and 12 minutes. I can talk ball with you for a long time. I appreciate you joining the show, man. If you want to give your final thoughts of the stream and the Jets in general, and anything that you got going on your channel in the next couple of weeks that you want to keep them up to date on.
Yeah, people typically are like, oh, it's 30 minutes, and it's always like a double the time, because I just ramble for a while. So I appreciate you having me on again. I hope to do it again in the near future. And in terms of, follow me, JoeRB31 on Twitter, Blewett Splits on YouTube. A lot of the film stuff I do breakdowns of, like frame by frame, so you can really see what's going on. And then in terms of what's happening in the future, it's Sauce Gardner, Clemens, Max Mitchell, Breece Hall. Like, you're going to get breakdowns that can range anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. Like, I think they did 9 hours total on Zach Wilson. So I know it's probably a little bit too much, but you're going to get breakdowns of all these guys. I already have Sauce Gardner part 1 out, Jermaine Johnson part 1 out, and Garrett Wilson part 1 out. So make sure you check those out. And then for the rest of the film, just follow along, because you're basically going to be getting it shoved down your throat for the next 3-4 months if you are a follower.
Yeah, guys, if you're not checking out Joe's content on Jets X Factor, make sure you do so. He goes into the film room and dives deep into every single play, frame by frame, breaks it down to the point where like you need to know everything about these players. Make sure you guys go check out Jets X Factor. I appreciate everybody tuning into the show. Make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button if you enjoyed and you want to see Joe hop on the channel maybe sometime in the summer for training camp. Love to have him back on the show. And again, guys, all the support here in Jets Media is greatly appreciated. Expect Jets content coming your way for the rest of the week, of course. That does it for this one, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Let's go, Jets!